Corbin, if you want to tell folks a little bit about yourself.
I mean, yeah, so that's the elevator pitch. So
Yeah, that's
got
what I
out
saw.
of I East Tennessee native, born and bred here. I live in Lenoir City now, which is like in the foothills of the Smoky Mountains. From this area. I got into politics basically in 2015 when Bernie ran for president the first time. Before that, I was in manufacturing and food service and food trucks. Um, and I just got called, like an altar call by Bernie into the movement and ended up loving it. That was sort of, I was decent at it. And I had passion for it. So I stayed with Bernie for about a year, left due to found brand new Congress. And that ultimately became Justice Democrats, and then worked as AOC's communications director and chief strategist on her campaign, and then on her Hill staff for a while. Um, and then sort of ran into a brick wall that is change, and came back to East Tennessee for a while. I became a general contractor, got my licenses doing that. And then Donald Trump got reelected a second time, or got elected a second time. And I thought to myself, well, this won't work. So I started America's Undoing, which is a Substack at americasundoing.com. And I've been writing a lot about economic policy and sort of how the Democratic Party can rebuild itself into the supermajoritarian party that is competing in places like Tennessee 7, where Afton Bain just moved a 22-point district to a 8 and change district. And sort of articulating that vision. And I'm in the process of trying to launch a super PAC to articulate that vision even more loudly. So,
All right, love all that. Thanks so much for joining. I'm Kaivon for those of us who just joined. But great to have you, because I think there's so many debates happening in the party, including this week with Jasmine Crockett jumping into the Texas Senate race. And it seems like part of Democrats' problem is we have such vicious internal divides that sometimes we're not always then keeping the coalition together when it counts in the general elections. I'm curious, just to start, what you make of AOC and her evolution as somebody that obviously was born out of the outsider politics of Justice Democrats, and obviously the famous story of her going and knocking all those doors and those shoes that she shows of how worn down they were, to today when, there's certain folks showing up to her town halls and protesting her and calling her a Zionist. And I think people on the far left have been frustrated with her sort of working both inside and outside the system. What do you make of that? And I guess maybe if you want to also add part two, do you see Mamdani taking that tack? I know people here have criticized him. I'm in New York for keeping Jess Tisch, our police commissioner, on. For some
mhm.
folks criticized him for that Trump meeting. What do you make of all that?
Well, I mean, so, I worked with Alexandria for several years. And I think there was yeah, I mean, when she first won her race against Crowley in 2018, she went on a national tour. We went to Hawaii to help try to elect Kanyela Ng, who was running there as a Justice Democrat. We went to St. Louis to try to help Cori Bush get elected that same cycle. She was going to help doing stumps for Ayanna Pressley and a bunch of other people. Abdullah Saeed was running for governor at the time. We were in Kansas with Brent Welder and various other folks, James Thompson. And, there was doing sit-ins in Nancy Pelosi's office before she was even seated. And I think there's only so long that a single human being can run into a wall over and over and over again and still keep at it. And so I think, one of the things that you need, and that's the reason I'm doing America's Undoing. It's the reason I'm launching the Super PAC. It's the reason for my work, at least, is that what you need is an alternative movement to join into and be a part of, right? You can't ask somebody to stand on an island for weeks and months and years, even supported by small dollar donors. I mean, she's got a lot of support and a lot of media clout and a lot of power in that regard. But it's only so useful when you're, one person out of, 200 or whatever the current makeup of the Democratic Congress is. So the problem is that there's not a real worldview or ideology that is shifting the status quo to really fight for. I mean, you've got things like Medicare for All or something like that where you can fight for individual policies. But those individual policies by themselves aren't enough, even to solve the healthcare crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Medicare for All isn't enough. You've got a supply problem. And I think the Zoran's going to run into the same issues in New York. And the issues are going to be that, to transform people's lives, to increase affordability in a real meaningful way. And I think that's going to be the topic of this next cycle in 26 and the midterms, and then going into 28 is going to be affordability.
Mhm.
You don't do it working around the edges, and I think healthcare, I talk a lot about healthcare because it's one of those that I think is obviously dysfunctional. We
Mhm.
rank so low internationally. We spend the most money, internationally per capita. And there's so many visible ways that that system doesn't work. And there are so many obvious ways that it could. So for me, healthcare becomes sort of this like, specific example that you can then spread over all the other essential components of life. Everything can't be handled by the free market. It's not designed to do everything.
Yeah.
And I think that I think Zoran's walking into an environment where that's not going to be the case for him. So,
Where's the line, I guess, then for people who feel so excited and hopeful by a candidate like Mamdani and then suddenly feel like, oh, okay, well, they're just going to become part of the establishment? I think with your explanation in mind, not to put words in your mouth, but to get stuff done, you have to work within a system. I think a lot of people think, and I believe that to be true. Feel free to disagree. But, I also think then it's hard to wrap your brain around, who gets that support and who gets the sort of, leeway to make those compromises in pursuit of their big campaign promises versus who is, a sellout and gives in. I feel like those debates happen a lot on the left and are unevenly applied. I'll give you an example as well of, age just as an issue, period, right? Bernie Sanders is not only running for re-election now, he is filed to run for re-election in 6 years from now when he's in his 90s. And the same sort of chorus on the left that thinks, a lot of 60 and 70-year-old folks are kind of, past their time and should step aside, don't seem to hone in on his age as an issue. So is there hypocrisy in all of this, or is that the wrong lens?
well, I mean, that's a lot to unpack. I guess, to start off first with, do you need to work within a system? You either need to work within a system and join a team, or you need to be actively working to create a new system and build a new team, in my opinion, right? And I think that's the critical thing here. You've got a system that was built by, deindustrialization, offshoring of jobs, offshoring of manufacturing. We've gotten, like, the New York Times just had an editorial about how desperate a condition. This is the editorial board, right? Not, just not op-ed, about how desperate a condition the US military is in, how we've lost the ability to compete globally, how we've lost the ability to defend Europe or lost the ability to defend Taiwan against the Chinese military. And what's interesting is they never make the connection in that. They blame sort of like a bloated military industrial complex, and they blame a lot of things, but they don't get to the core, what I think is the core, which is that we've lost the knowledge base. We've lost the engineers, we've lost the builders, we've lost the technicians, we don't have the manufacturing capacity to make the stuff that we need in this country to, survive and to thrive. And we don't certainly make enough of this stuff in our country to put it out into the world.
Mhm.
And I think that is part of the lens what I would view the whole thing through, is that you're either going to work to disable that system and build a new one that's actually going back to productivity, one that's going back to value, one that's going back to, building quality lives for people, or you're going to continue down this road and do as much or as little damage to people's lives as possible. That'll be like arguments about whether or not we should have more injection into Medicare and Medicaid, or should we cut it, right? I mean, we're on track to spend $9 trillion by the year 2033 on healthcare alone, just healthcare, right? And that is a largely unsustainable thing. And the crazy thing is, it's not like we're getting this gold-plated healthcare system that's so plentiful that we can have doctors coming to our house to see us, right? So, and so I think that that's part of the dynamic. And then, is it wrong for people to say, hey, you're too old, you got to go? I mean, I think one of those fights would be Conley. I think it was Jerry Conley that was up for, I don't remember what the chairman's seat was that AOC was also shooting for. Conley got the seat. Then he had lung cancer, or no, I'm
Mhm.
sorry, esophageal cancer, and all sorts of other issues going on. But he had earned that damn gavel. There's this idea that somehow your time in Congress means that you're next in line to lead.
Yeah,
And I think like Steve Cohen's he's a rep from Tennessee 9,
sure.
and he's been in that seat for a long time. And now he's got Justin Pearson running against him in the primary. And I don't think it's just about age. It's about what you're doing with your seat. Bernie Sanders ain't just sitting there, waiting for a gavel. He's doing this Stop the Oligarchy tour. He's traveling around the country. He's organizing people. He's going to union protests.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
it's
hear
different.
that. Does it sort of betray, though, a lack of pipeline or sort of talent development that it's still Bernie Sanders doing that? And I guess, like, my follow-up question, Justice Democrats, I think, got a lot of coverage right after AOC's win, and people thought maybe it would lead to a movement across the country. I feel like instead they produced a lot of losses in a short period of time, and they weren't really able to get over that line of building a real credible coalition that was enduring. There was a lot of infighting, there was a lot of drama, it seemed like. And so now we have DS, and again, totally
Mhm.
disagree with me. I see your reaction, but and I want you to compare it to now, where DSA also, I think, had its own national infighting, lots of drama, folks who were very proud to support the candidates but didn't like how things were being run. Speak about Chi Ase and Zoran Mamdani showing up to actively tamp down a challenger to Hakeem Jeffries. And then also, I think this idea that now DSA is looking to, again, surge and really make their case on a national level. And I think they've really tied their, star to Mamdani. And I think you pointed out it's going to be pretty challenging for him to get some of the things he wants to get done. Is it going to be more successful than that first pass, or do you see them both as equally successful?
Well, so I mean, Justice Democrats, I don't think really strung up that many losses. It's interesting what you see on like a Wikipedia page or something as far as like the candidates, but Justice Democrats was a different organization, say, than most of these organizations. Not to mention any names, but most organizations, candidate organizations, endorse people. And then they have, they run ads for them, they endorse them, and then that's who they say, like, what is it? Emily's List and all this shit, they endorse, right? And then they endorse, support. Justice Democrats, brand new Congress, those were not the models. The model was recruit from scratch. AOC was not running for Congress, then we endorsed her. AOC was driving to a protest in Standing Rock, and we called her and said, "Will you run?" We were having conversations with thousands of people, asking them to run for Congress and trying to talk them into leaving their communities, stuff that they were already working on doing good work to do, and go into DC to try to change it. So it's a different setup, and I think to the degree that they were successful. I left after I joined AOC in 2018. I think they did some pretty good work with the limited resources. I was looking at how much money we had. Brand new Congress raised somewhere around 700,000, and Justice Democrats had raised like 1.2 million by the time AOC was elected. So I mean, it was a real, drop in the bucket financially speaking. And to date, they've only raised 15 million. So what they were able to accomplish with what they had, and now they've got a slate of 6 people running. I'm actually pretty impressed with what JD did, pre and post me. But then I will say, what I think with Chiose is the disappointment there I had was with Chiose. Run for the damn seat. We need Hakeem Jeffries gone. He is not the future of this party. He is not a leader that will take the Democratic
Are
Party
you a
to the
DSA guy,
promised
by the
land.
way, or
No.
okay?
No. I'm not what you would even call a lefty, I don't think. But
Okay, I
um
guess how
why did
so.
they need DSA? AOC didn't have DSA.
Yeah,
DSA
and
didn't
this
endorse
today actually
AOC until
interesting.
like what, 3 weeks before.
Obviously, Brad Lander is jumping in to challenge Dan Goldman, and the DSA again candidate has decided to drop out because they don't want to split the more progressive vote. What like what do you think, whether you're part or not, sounds like, of DSA they need to do to be a credible, long lasting infrastructure for more progressive candidates then? And I guess one of the criticisms, I think, whether it's Justice Democrats, and I think ironically, the candidates you name in Justice Democrats, a lot of them are minority folks, but there sort of seems to be this broad brush that the further left of the party is not diverse. And that's certainly something that came up with Xi's endorsement debate was DSA seems to keep passing on some of these candidates. And maybe that is because some of them are newer to the organization. But what do you see as the
I just don't
opportunity?
think, I don't think that I think that if you build it, they will come. AOC built a campaign. Justice
Mhm.
Democrats helped her. Brand new Congress helped her.
Yeah.
And then, we were trying to recruit hundreds. We didn't get it. And Working Families Party, I just saw them
Yeah.
they
Tough start.
endorsed Joe Crowley, right? They endorsed her opponent. DSA didn't help until the end of it.
Mhm.
And is that a shit on DSA? Is that a shit on Working Families Party? Not in my opinion. I'm just saying, like, she should have gone for it. There was a national desire, people like me, to see Hakeem Jeffries gone. And that was those turnouts in those primaries in New York are abysmal, and they've been designed to be so. AOC won with 16,000 votes and change against Joe Crowley.
Mhm.
16,000 votes is what put her in this office and has projected her on to what she's been able to accomplish and do. And, and you look at like Hakeem Jeffries, and I think his last primary, he got somewhere like 20,000 votes, 22, I don't remember what it was. And then the opponent got 3,500. And I looked at her, she didn't even do anything. She just filed. She, literally being an alternative to him, got, I think it was 12% of the vote. Right. So my disappointment is that people like Chi they didn't feel so strongly that Hakeem had to go that he just didn't run anyway. Right. And I think DSA wants to project this idea that they're this very democratic institution. But the Speaker of the House, if we win this election cycle, is important to way more than just New York 8. It's important to the whole damn country, and it matters to me in Tennessee, and it affects my
Well, and I
life and
guess
my
though,
kids'
like,
life.
where where does somebody like him go though? If you have Mamdani coming out actively against the primary, obviously Jeffries has a huge base of support. So I hear you on the low
I would
turnout.
disagree with that.
It
What
could
huge
be.
base of support does he have?
So
Not in
should
his
he just
district,
jump in and keep doing TikToks? Like, is that how somebody like him can really fight a race like that? Like, where's the
I think.
infrastructure?
I mean, so the infrastructure comes from a national campaign. That would have been a national race. And, everybody can talk about the doors they knocked, but that's not really what drove AOC's victory either. It wasn't the doors. When you look at the campaign turnout, so when you actually start looking at the people we identified as likely voters through voter contact,
Yeah.
those aren't the people that voted for her. A lot of the fours and fives they call, and those are the people you identified as your voters, didn't even show up.
Okay.
They didn't go. It was a totally different thing that led her to victory. It was media, largely the same thing that led Donald Trump to victory in his first
Yeah.
term. It wasn't a robust field operation. It wasn't door knocking and phone banking. It was media. You get through to people these days much more easily through their phones and and that sort of thing. That's where these conversations are happening. And it sucks, but yeah, that's the
It's
way it happened.
interesting to hear you say that because I feel like one of the takeaways some people have had from Donnie and candidates that have been successful going viral is that it's not just about going digital. It's not just about the media. It's about the policies. And I guess that would be nice if it's true. I don't buy into that because I think we see a lot of folks, whether it's Jasmine Crockett or Gavin Newsom, who don't have sort of those same big swing policies that they're championing also succeed in terms of media and going viral. What do you make of that?
I mean, there's no question that being telegenic and being able to speak in a way that people find compelling, to say things that you believe, therefore it comes across as authentic,
Yeah.
is important, right? So, I mean, I think the policy matters to some degree. I think it can matter. I think it can add to it. But I mean, Zoran Mamdani was objectively a good looking, telegenic, well spoken person, right? So did that hurt him in any way, shape, or form? No. Same thing with Alexandria. She also said things that she believed. People
Mhm.
get themselves tied up into knots trying to say shit they don't believe and trying to explain things that they don't understand. And I think that's one of the, most critical things. And I think Crockett is a great example of somebody that has a very different style, but the content of the message is very much corporate Democrat. And we'll see if that works. My guess is it ain't going to work. I
Do
think
you
she's
think
going
she
to.
shouldn't have jumped in?
I mean, I was reading this thing today. I guess it was Upside that put it out about the NRCC or the National Republican Senate campaign arm running sort of like a low key drag her into the into the fight operation. And yeah, I mean, it looks like it worked. I would, maybe I'm not saying she shouldn't have
You think?
run. I just don't think
Sorry.
she's going
So
to.
wait, say a little more about that because I've also seen a lot of people talking about that. You think she made this decision based on this like honeypot, like deceptive thing? I mean, the reality is her district got redistricted.
Yeah.
She wants to stay in politics. She has a huge platform. Like I find it curious. Like
I mean,
the
I think seeing that you might could win, definitely. Nobody wants to get embarrassed either,
Sure,
right? I
but
mean,
you
like,
think she didn't hire her own poster? She didn't have her own people. She just went off of a Republican base poll.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
yet. I think that seeing momentum, right, helps you make a decision and jump into something that's going to be long and hard. But also, I think she enjoys it. There's no question she enjoys having the attention, having the limelight, and trolling. That is so what she's getting into isn't for what a lot of people would hate. Like, I would not do it. I wouldn't run because I would hate doing it, right? She clearly enjoys doing it. So, it's not like you had to twist her
Lindsay
arm or
McMillan.
anything.
Who do you see as the future of the party?
Who do I see as the future of that's in the party? That's out there loud and clear? I don't know who they're gonna be. I think
Like,
they're gonna
yeah,
be,
like whether it's 2028 or just like local people that you think are inspiring and kind of get it. Like was Often one of those people?
I think Afton's got a lot that she brings to the table for sure. I think Afton brings charisma and ideas to the table. I think that the future of the party can't rest with individuals. I think that's been part of our problem is that we've wanted AOC to be the future of the party or Bernie to be the future of the party or Obama to be the future of the party. And the problem is that when you have people be the future of the party, like right now you're about to see a real consequence to having one person be the future of the party. And this is with Donald Trump and MAGA and the Republican Party.
100%.
And their ideas are not good enough to go beyond Trump. I don't think. We'll see. And I think that the problem is the Democratic Party has lacked ideas that are transformational enough to be able to bring quality lives to people, to be able to people to be able to feel their government in their lives in a positive way. And they've not even tried to make the case for it to a degree. They've subsidies or something like that. Subsidies and guardrails, man. That's the way the Democratic Party sort of sees its role as a government. And I just don't think that people are going to get what they think they need out of life with government taking that role. We need a more active role for our government. It's just the way it is. Netflix is not going to save us. Paramount's not going to save us. The Ellisons will not
I
save
heard a
us.
great line from one of Mom Johnny's people a couple of days ago, which is that bad ideas beat no ideas. And Republicans have been shooting out these bad ideas, and I think Democrats have failed to articulate anything at all. So, they certainly need that positive vision of what they're going to fight for. Well, thank you so much
Yeah.
for joining, and really appreciate the conversation and all the work you've done. It sounds like you've touched a lot of different corners of the national political space. So
I'm a
really
corner
appreciate your
toucher.
insights.